the actual ceasefire model is a model that's based on an organic process that started with pastors responding to the violence in their community. All right, it started, the model actually emerged 20 years ago in Boston. You had Eugene Rivers, Jeff Brown, and Ray Hammond, 3 pastors, a Pentecostal, Kojic pastor, a Baptist pastor, and an AME pastor, got together as they recognized that there was murders throughout their neighborhood that they couldn't stop, and started walking the communities during the most hot zones of the weekend, and walking at the times to engage with people who were either at a high risk to commit acts of violence or high risk to be victims of violence, and began to engage in walking the community and building relationships with those people who are at high risk for the purposes of leveraging that relationship building towards transforming their community. All right, I want us to hear that so that we recognize that what we're asking us to do and asking us to think about is not to lean into a process that somehow was cooked up in a room by some people that have a lot of degrees about, you know, social development or, you know, whatever ology somebody wants to add, you know, to their record. This was something that came up as a direct response of pastors recognizing that they had to change their community. What the night walking is basically is it is a coordinated, sustainable grassroots response where churches and faith leaders, lay leaders, clergy are gathering together to walk the communities on a consistent basis for the purposes of building relationships with people who are living within the community. All right, everybody say consistent. Consistent. So there's a tendency, and I know it's none of y'all in here because we're all very sanctified people, but there's a tendency for sometimes us to be event driven, right? So we'll have an event, and then we'll be all deep down in the community, and then we'll disappear. Right. And then we'll have another event, and then we got all the bells and whistles, and then we disappear. One of the things, I used to pastor before I retired. And one of the things I realized when I got in the community about 5 years ago was that I was in West Oakland, I was walking the community, and I went up to a guy with a flyer, and I told him, I said, listen, you know, as soon as I started reaching out with the flyer, he told me, I don't want your mother flyer. I said, man, why are you coming at me like that, man? I'm trying to work in the community. He said, let me tell you something about you Christians. Yeah. He said, I've been in West Oakland 40 years. You come in and you go out. You come in and you go out. You come in and you go out. He said, I don't want your effing flyer because you'll be gone in a year. That's what he told me. Wow. Yeah. I got my feelings hurt. You know, I walked away, but that challenged me to make sure that I stayed on the streets. Yeah. And when I saw him 2 years later, I was like, oh gee. And he was like, all right, youngster, get on out of here. Right? So it's sustainable, it's consistent, us building relationships with people in the community for the purposes of leveraging those relationships to transform the community. Other thing I want to say, we are going to be going to the rest of the city. I know some of the issues have been for some of us that have said, well, why are we working in East Oakland? My church is in West Oakland. Or my church is in North Oakland. Or I live in this place. I live in the San Antonio district. I live by the lake. You know, I want to focus on the area where I'm living or where my church is. The reality is, no matter where your church, your parish, your temple, your synagogue is, the violence is affecting all of us, right? So we must go where it is the most difficult, and we already have built into the strategy that we're going to be moving to West Oakland. We're going to be moving ultimately to North Oakland until, like the scripture says, the glory of God covers the earth like the water covers the sea. We want to get this model out where we are covering the city of Oakland. Amen. So that there is no neighborhood, there is no region that is not covered and not engaged with people of faith, walking the community on a consistent basis.